Okay, everybody, let's talk about how to answer the job interview question, what is your leadership style? Or what is your management style? This is actually a management interview question. And this one requires a bit of discussion because this is a very complicated question. And this is an article that appeared in Career Sidekick recently that talks about how to answer this. And we're going to get into it. We're going to go down this article. We're going to talk about what they're saying here and see if they got it right. And I'm going to give you what I would say afterwards if I was asked this question. Okay, so here's the deal. This is a question that can be asked in practically any job interview. Okay, you don't have to be going for a middle management job or an upper level management job like an executive role to be asked this, although they do ask this question certainly for those positions. If you are in a job that you are going for a supervisor type job, or you're going for a worker level job, but there's a chance that you might have to move into a supervisor type role in the future, even if it's only temporarily, they could ask you this question, okay? Now, let's start at the beginning here. There is no cookie cutter answer to this question, okay? Because it depends greatly on who's asking the question, whether it's a hiring manager or a recruiter, and it depends greatly on the role that you're being interviewed for, and also the culture of the company. So, I mean, your answer can vary widely. Now, this hasn't stopped a lot of people on the internet from giving you answers to this job interview and like really simplifying the answers, and really getting it wrong, in my opinion. But let's talk about this question here. First of all, leadership and management are two separate things, okay? But unfortunately, in common parlance, people seem to mix and match those terms, okay? So they're actually two separate things. Okay, now, leadership style, technically, leadership refers to your ability to influence others, okay? So if you're it's the people management component of being a manager. Okay, managers deal with many things. They manage money, they manage budgets, they organize departments and things like this, but they also lead people. Okay, so leadership is the people management component of that. Now, let's look at what this article says here. Okay, how to answer what is your leadership style in job interviews. Now, the big problem with this question is that if you're being asked this question by a recruiter, okay, someone who works for HR and who is paid to try and find a short list of candidates for any particular job that they're given, okay, these people themselves are not managers, and usually that means they're not leaders. They don't lead a department full of people, okay? So in most cases, a recruiter doesn't know from experience what the answer to this question is. They wouldn't know what an appropriate answer is. They know what they're told. They're asking this question from a cookie cutter list of questions, and they are given the answer key, okay? They don't know from experience what would be a good answer to this and what would be a bad answer. They're just looking for some very basic things in your answer. Now, the other thing is that if you're an experienced manager and you're being asked this question, obviously your answer is going to be different from whether you're a worker, someone who has never supervised or led anybody else before. Okay? So the first thing that this article talks about is when it says how to answer, okay, is that if they're asking you this question in an interview, it means that they care about your leadership ability. Yes, okay, we know that. It doesn't have to be direct leadership. You don't need to have managed or supervised people in a past job. No, you don't. Okay. Now, if they're asking this question to see if you have actually led people or supervised people, that can come out a lot better in other questions. Okay. When they ask about, why should we hire you? And if they ask you about your experience supervising people, that would be the best way for that to be explained in this in a job interview. However, if they've left it to this question, okay, like it says here, don't say you've never led anyone, okay, because that basically the assumption is that you don't know how to lead people, okay, if you've said that. Okay. So don't say that. I mean, everyone has led somebody else at some point in their lives. Okay. Even if you've had siblings, okay, or friends or something like that, or you've had to work in a group and you might have done more work than other people so you can explain to them what's going on or anything like that. We've all led people. So saying you've never led anyone at all in the past is a bad answer, okay? Because there's implications to this. Implications that you don't know what you're doing or things like this. I'm not really a leader, or I'm not sure. Okay, that's bad, okay? Number 2, sound like you have a method or system that works for you. Now, you see, this is one of the things I'm talking about. If you're dealing with a recruiter, maybe they have this as, they would regard this as a correct answer. They would think like, as long as you have a system, then that would be good. But if you're being asked this question by a hiring manager, okay, someone who actually has led people before, someone who has supervised people before, chances are that they're going to look beyond just you having done it and you having a system. They're going to want a specific way that you do it, and they're going to want to have to personally agree with the way that you do it, okay? That's what makes this question tricky, because you don't know what their style of leadership is, and you don't know what their personal hangups might be that they think one style works better than another, okay? There are also differences in corporate culture where you have different leadership styles, and certain industries favor one style over another. For example, in a startup company in Silicon Valley, they will probably not have a very authoritarian leadership style. You won't send a supervisor around to make sure that you're working and enforce the rules and get people back to work if they're not working. That's usually not how startups work in Silicon Valley, okay? That might be how you would manage a local McDonald's with a bunch of high school kids that don't really enjoy their job and are just looking for a way to do as little as possible while not getting fired. That might be the role of the supervisor there. Okay, so the answer is going to depend a lot on the culture of the company, okay, or of the organization. So already, before we even get any further into this, you got a few variables here, okay? You've got the industry you're in, you've got the person that's asking the question, what role they're in, and you've got the specific culture of the company that you're hiring for, okay? And a lot of these are things that you may not know. You might not know how that company likes things done. And you may not know the exact role of the person asking this question. Okay? So already we're at a disadvantage. It really makes it hard to get the right answer when there's this many unknowns. Okay? Now it says here, there's no single right or wrong answer to this interview question. Yeah, but the problem is the person asking could have a very clear idea of what they consider to be a good answer and what they consider to be a bad answer, and you don't know what they're thinking, okay? So bear with me. I'm setting this up here, okay? Number 3, share specific examples of possible. Okay, well, you could do this. This is one way to do it, okay? But I don't know if I would really do this unless they especially prompt you, okay? For example, if you are if you're a professional and you have worked as, say, a general manager for 10 years, okay, and they're asking you, what's your leadership style? They're probably not asking you this question to see if you have been a manager before, and they don't want specific examples necessarily to prove that you know how to manage people. They're simply asking you, what's your style, okay? And you explain your style, and you might give a reason or two why, but I wouldn't recommend, I don't think it's necessary that you give specific examples of why you would, of how you would do this. Sometimes it's even hard to remember specific examples. Like, for example, if I ask you, okay, let's say, I assume that when you eat food at home, you make dirty dishes. And I assume that you take your own dirty dishes to the kitchen to get them washed. Give me an example of when you've done that before. Well, this is something that we've all done before, but can you remember a specific example and give me great detail? Probably not. It's kind of a silly thing to ask for a specific example. I want dates, times, I want number of plates, I want, exactly where you went, or how quickly you washed your dishes after you used them. It's kind of a silly question depending on the context, okay? So they give you some examples here, okay? Common leadership styles. Well, leading by example, I mean, this is where we see how can I put this? A difference between people who have been to business school and actually know how this stuff works versus people who have never been to business school and who have just sort of been around managers and, kind of fall into it. And they think that these are actual styles. Leading by example is not a style of management. Leading by facilitating communication, neither is that a style of management, okay? Leading by delegation, okay? Delegating a delegative leadership style is an actual leadership style, okay? So this is an example of probably somebody that doesn't know what a right answer is, and but they might be impressed by this because of the criteria that they mentioned here. It looks like you have a system that works for you. Now, here is what I would recommend. Okay, if you get asked this and you don't know all the specific variables here, you don't know exactly who the person is asking, you don't know this industry, what they prefer, and you don't know at this organization what they prefer, okay? This is what I would say, okay? Somebody asks me, what is your leadership style or what is your management style? I would say, well, I don't have a single leadership style or management style because not every situation can be handled exactly the same. You have different type problems, you have different size problems, and they're all different. And as a result, you need to switch up your management style or your leadership style depending on the situation, okay? Now, there are 4 styles that I personally have had to employ in the past on a regular basis, okay? First of all, I've had to adopt a very autocratic leadership style, okay, where I make an executive decision and I expect my subordinates to carry out that decision and to abide by it, okay? And some situations call for that. Not too often, but sometimes you have to do that. You've got to make sure that everybody is pulling in the same direction and they're all working together to advance a common goal, okay? So I've had to do that on occasion. Alternatively, I do employ a delegative leadership style, okay? And I believe that was mentioned in this article. They actually got that right. That is a style. Lead by delegating. And this is because, you don't need to micromanage everything. You don't have to stand over your employees and be involved in the process for everything that they do. Actually, that can work to your detriment because a lot of tasks would tend to bottleneck through me, the manager. Everything that happens can't depend on my involvement for it to get done. So especially if you have very good, capable employees, I can just delegate tasks to employees and trust that they will get them done. This is usually reserved for more routine type jobs, okay? Things that don't require a lot of executive decisions, things that are more routine. So I've had to employ that on occasion also, okay? So that's the second leadership style that I'm mentioning here, okay? So we've talked about autocratic, we've talked about delegative, okay? Alternatively, okay, I employ a consultative leadership style, okay, where I ask my subordinates, I say, what do you think is the best way forward for this particular question, this particular challenge? What would you recommend? This works if the subordinate in question has a lot more hands-on experience with this particular challenge than I do, okay? Like, for example, if I'm a sales manager and a subordinate of mine is handling that particular account, they would know the ins and outs of that account much better than I would because they've been doing it. That's been their 9 to 5 for a couple of weeks. And so I would welcome their input in making a command decision for how we're going to handle that particular client. Okay, so I have use that on occasion, okay, a consultative, where I consult with one or more employees, get their 2 cents, and then make a decision, okay? And finally, the fourth leadership style that I've had to use on occasion is a participative leadership style. This is reserved for questions that are very complicated, okay? Decisions that are very complicated. They have multiple effects on multiple people. They affect different people in different ways. They affect different things in different ways. And it's very complicated relationships. So for that, I would get everybody together and we hammer it out. It goes back and forth and around, and people get to propose things, and we hear everybody's 2 cents and make a decision that is optimal for everybody, okay? Where it addresses as many issues as possible and minimizes the downside. So that also can be the right handling for certain issues. So depending on the issue and depending on the decision that needs to be made, I can employ any one of those, whichever one is the most appropriate for the situation. And that way you get the best of both worlds, or the best of all worlds. And that's my leadership style, okay? I'm not a one-trick pony. I know how to do this multiple ways, and hopefully that makes sense. So that would be my answer. You don't have to go into as much detail as I just went into. I was quite thorough in giving a lot of detail and explaining these. But I feel that the best answer to this question, especially when you don't know a lot of the variables that we're talking about here, okay, that is a pretty safe answer. That, number one, conveys that you know what you're talking about, okay, and that you understand some of the subtleties of being able to make decisions about a variety of different things, okay? Secondly, it doesn't risk too much that you say the wrong thing to someone who has their mind made up about a particular leadership style being better than others, okay? Because people can have all kinds of opinions and hang-ups that you're going to walk right into, not, unawares when they ask you these types of questions. It's almost like an ambush question, okay? Now, just to add a little on the end of this, okay? I know this video is long enough, but really just to illustrate some of the difficulties with this question, okay, is that I've been a hiring manager and I've had to ask this question or questions similar to it in job interviews for hiring managers and things. And if somebody had said something less than what I just gave as an example, okay, I listed 4 different management styles or leadership styles and said I can switch up between them. If they had said less than that, I would have perceived that as a red flag. Okay, for example, if someone just says I have a very military style, authoritative style, where I make command decisions, I give orders and I expect people to instantly comply with the orders, and that's how I make my decisions, that's how I lead, that would raise a red flag for me. That would lead me to think that there could be a problem with this type of management, because you could drive away good employees. You have some talented people that are working underneath you, and that might be very abrasive, always to just bark out the orders and not allow any discussion, make every decision yourself, not consulting with anyone, not listening to anyone. That could be problematic, okay? Although you might need to do that sometimes, doing that for everything would be a problem. So that would be a red flag for me. Conversely, if you said, I have a very participative leadership style, I get everybody together and, we all talk about it together and it goes back and forth, and, then we end up, sort of making a decision that's the best for everyone, that would also raise red flags. Because if the person just said that was their whole leadership style, that would lead me to suspect that this person is not a very strong leader. They can't take charge. And it could lead to a decision by committee for every type of decision that needs to be made, which has problems of itself. It leads to groupthink, and it leads to a lot of politics. And then it could also lead to factions of employees going down different roads. Like they're 3 employees here are going one way, and then another 5 employees over there are pulling in a different direction. and they're not helping each other out, and they're not heading towards the same goal. They're working different plans, and they don't have that centralized control that keeps everybody on task. Okay, and not just doing what every individual person wants to do, what satisfies them, but what is appropriate for the collective. Okay, so if someone just said that, oh, I have a very participative leadership style, I always get everybody involved, and I always ask, them to sign off on every decision and to buy into every decision before it gets made, that can present problems of its own. So, and then conversely for the other two, for a delegative style, if you say I have a delegative style and that's it, that would lead me to believe that there's maybe a red flag that this person, if they delegate everything and they don't really do anything. And I have I have seen people that fall into that role, who really don't do much. They're the boss, but they just delegate all their work onto their subordinates, and then they don't really do anything. They don't add any value. And then what was the final one? The final one was there's authoritative, delegative, participative, and consultative. Consultative is when you involve one or possibly more employees in every decision. You consult with them. You say, what do you think? What do you think we should do? And if that was their whole answer, my concern there would be that this person doesn't really know how to do anything themselves. They just simply ask their employees what they should do when it comes to any decision, and just blindly follow what the subordinate says they should do. And once again, in that case, they're not really adding a lot of value. They perhaps don't have the experience base or the knowledge required to do their job, which is to lead that unit, that collective, correctly. So as a result, if you gave only one answer, or you gave one or two answers, but you missed out some of these other styles, for myself, they would be your answer would raise some concerns. Okay, and it would lead to some questions. You want to be able to cover all your bases while simultaneously giving a safe answer that is immune to walking into an ambush question where, unbeknownst to you, the person you're talking to believes in authoritative leadership styles and nothing else. And if you say anything other than that, they'll assume you're a bad manager and you have a poor leadership style. So it's safe, covers all the bases, and at the same time, because you're giving enough detail, like I did, I don't think people are going to be hitting you up for specific examples of different things, because you've already given enough detail to show that you understand what you're talking about. So that would be how I would answer this question. That would be the criteria I use to judge it. And some things in this article that it said were not bad, like, for example, leading by example. I mean, that's not a bad answer. That can be good, but it's not really a style technically. Lead by facilitating communication. That's not really a style. Any way of making a decision is going to require communication. Even if it's simply to announce what your decision is, it all requires great communication skills, and that's a given, okay? If you are a leader or a manager, you're going to be supervising people or managing people, one of the assumptions is that you have pretty decent communication skills, and if not, then it's not going to work, okay? So all in all, this is not too bad. They give you some examples here. I've already given a very long one, so I think that should be good. But if you want to read the article for yourself, I will put a link to it in the description. Thank you very much for your attention. You guys are awesome. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.